All right, tonight we have with us professional triathlete Felipe Bastos, who's originally from Brazil, who now lives in Florida. And Felipe has 44 career overall wins in triathlons. Felipe, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Craig. Good to be here.
So tell me, when you first heard about Oxygen for Energy, what caught your attention and what made you want to try it?
At first, I didn't know a whole lot about it, and I did a little bit of research, and I understood at the time it wasn't still legalized by WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association. But at the beginning of 2010, it was made available to all athletes. It was free to use. So I decided to give it a try, and I've been with the product ever since because it's made a tremendous difference in my training and racing.
Okay, so from a training perspective, what kind of differences has it made for you?
It's made training overall a lot easier for me. Recovery's been made faster, and my intervals are harder and faster as well.
So from a training perspective, are you using it only for interval training and for recovery, or are you using it in different ways? Because there's going to be a lot of triathletes listening to this call, and they're going to want to know where they could use this product to benefit them.
I use it a lot during the hard interval training sessions that I do. Most of my training is done in intervals, but I can only assume it'd be as beneficial in long workouts, especially when you're just starting to push the pace. That aside from the swim that you can't stop, on the bike and the run, you can easily take that out of your pocket, take that out of your jersey, and take a few breaths out of it and keep your pace just as strong. So while I use it most of the time in my interval training, I don't think that using it during the longer sessions would be detrimental at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I think that would speed it up just the same.
What is it that makes you use it on your high-intensity speed work and interval-type training? Why are you doing that?
Interval training is really hard by nature. You're trying to force a pace on your body that it doesn't want to go at. So I think that pumping my body, making sure that it's oxygen-rich before I go out on a hard session and during that hard session as well as after the session so I recover well, I think that it makes a tremendous difference in keeping up the paces that I want to keep up doing both all swimming, biking, and running.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, most of the athletes that I deal with definitely, they tend to use Oxygen for Energy on their higher intensity workouts. It seems to really help them buffer the lactic acid. It allows them to push harder. Like you said, it gives you that endurance to really push through and maintain a very high intensity level. And it seems to me that, when you're able to push your body past the normal limits on a consistent basis, the muscles start to respond. Do you agree with that theory?
Absolutely, absolutely. Once you start pushing your body, it gets used to that pace and it starts craving a faster pace. So you can and that's exactly what improving in sport requires. You keep pushing it, pushing and pushing. And in order for me to achieve that, I've, since at least 2010, counted on Oxygen for Energy, and it's worked really well for me.
Now let's talk about competition. I know you're predominantly Olympic distance and below in your competitions. How do you use the product in competition?
As soon as I get out of the water, when I jump on the bike, I'll have a couple of cans either on my jersey, depending on the uniform that I'm racing, or I'll just put it on the bike if I'm not going to have a lot of time in transition. But either way, I try to take a couple of cans on the bike, and just usually in a 40K bike ride, the 25 miles, I'll go through those 2 cans, and when I start to run, I'll carry a can, or at least if it's a half Ironman, I'll have 2 cans with me, either on my hands, like running sticks. So it actually helps my form just holding the cans. But not in the beginning of the run, probably the first 3 or 4 miles, I'll go through a can. I'll go 2 miles just focusing on my nutrition, and then I'll use a can in the next 2 or 3 miles so I can push the pace all the way to the end.
Well, so have you found that in competition when you use it, it's a lot easier to push that pace and finish faster?
Absolutely. When you're competing, you're always redlining. So anything, even if it's doing 1% or 1.5% of improvement, it's just a huge help.
Now let me ask you about recovery, because a lot of the feedback I've been getting from triathletes specifically is it pretty much cuts their recovery time in half. And I guess after a race, your body is really wrecked for a while. How has your recovery been affected by using Oxygen for Energy?
It's definitely made it time it takes for me to recover from those hard efforts, either racing or just hard intervals. It's been cut short by a lot.
Do you have less pain, stiffness after or like how are you
I wouldn't
seeing that
say
recovery?
pain. The biggest problem, at least for me, with recovery has been my respiratory system recovery, making sure that after I do a hard session, I can do another one shortly thereafter. The biggest problem has always been for me making sure that my lungs are recovered, that I can go back on that second interval session and go hard and push my body, and I'll get enough sufficient oxygen with each breath that I take. When I'm tired, it seems like I'm just not getting enough of that, and that's where Oxygen for Energy comes in, and it helps me a lot.
That's incredible. So let's talk about altitude training. I know you've said you had a altitude 10, you were sleeping in it. So talk to me about that and how it compares and differs necessarily from what we're trying to accomplish with Oxygen for Energy.
They're very different. Altitude training is it's a much slower response. In order to get the benefits from altitude training, you need to do it for an extended period of time, several weeks, sometimes several months. You need to start slowly so you can build that up, and you can have your body create more red blood cells. And at first, when you do altitude, you're always going to slow down. There's no one that's going to go to altitude and immediately get faster. It's a delayed response. So if you're using that for racing, you have to wait until you go to an off season and have time to do that. While Oxygen for Energy is something that if you are only a few weeks out from your A race of the year and you want not only improve your training before the race, but during the race as well, you can immediately implement that and you're going to immediately see a benefit. And not to mention that the sleep quality that I had in a tent, it was just compromised by not only taking away the oxygen, but asphyxiating me at night a little bit, but also the heat inside the tent, it just wasn't dissipating enough, and my sleep quality was compromised.
Wow. I mean, because basically hypoxic training, which is altitude training, is to help you increase your red blood cell count so that you have more red blood cells, which helps transport more oxygen to the body. Whereas what we're doing with Oxygen for Energy is referred to as hyperoxic training, where we're actually giving your body higher amounts of oxygen right when you need it most so that you can consistently perform at a higher level and break through those plateaus, right? So which one have you found to be more beneficial for you?
Hyperoxic training for me has been the most beneficial because it's at a moment's notice. I can improve how my body is feeling and how I'm reacting. If I've been doing altitude training for 6 weeks, I can't just count on that to make me faster or race. While using Oxygen for Energy, at a moment's notice, I can notice that I can go faster, or at least I can keep the pace that I was starting to drop and perform better.
So let's say there's some beginner triathletes or up-and-coming triathletes that want to get to your level. What would you tell them about Oxygen for Energy?
I'd tell them definitely give it a try. You have nothing to lose. It's a product that's made a tremendous difference in both my training and my racing. And it's easy to use. It's fast. It's completely safe. Give it a try.
Have you had any negative side effects from it at all?
Absolutely none. It's only improved my training and my racing.
That's incredible. All right, so there you have it, professional triathlete Felipe Bastos talking about using Oxygen for Energy for training and competition. Felipe, again, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate all the input, and we wish you best of luck this season, and we're really excited to see how things go for the rest of the year for you.
Thank you.